You've tuned into Heroes Wanted. I am your host, Joe Prim. In this episode, I'm going to share a conversation with Ben Killoy. But as I'm recording this right now, I'm battling some bruised ribs. I was showing my son how to do bunny hops, and on the second or third bunny hop, the front handlebars let loose, and I went head over heels over the top of those handlebars and landed on my side. But the first thing that I did once I scraped myself up off of the dirt and laughed it off was go over and grab my Allen wrenches and tighten up those handlebars. You see, I knew that those handlebars were loose, but I tried to slide by. I tried to get by. I figured that it wouldn't be an issue. But the moment it was an issue, the moment it caused the problem, the moment I got hurt, I realized real quick that I should have tightened up those handlebars. So as you are listening to this, don't be like me. Don't fly over the handlebars and bruise your ribs before you tighten the handlebars. Tighten them the moment you notice things are not the way they should be. As in life, take care of the issue before it becomes a problem. When you see yourself starting to slide off course or get off track, course correct immediately. Don't wait till you're stuck in the ditch before you ask for help or try to get things going back in the right direction. So today's guest, Ben Killoy, is a Marine veteran, speaker, and a coach with a focus on helping dads rebuild confidence on the other side of generational trauma. Ben transitioned out of the Marines and was spending a great deal of time running on the common path in life. College, getting a job, start a family, all towards the American dream. In 2014, he dropped out of College of Engineering and left with a big question: what's next? From this point, he reconnected with a love for leadership and a desire to become a better husband and father. He launched his first podcast, Military Veteran Dad, in 2019, and now his second podcast, The Business of Fatherhood, in 2021. He is now a stay-at-home dad and coach, spending quality time with his family while still working hard and helping others. Ben now helps other dads come home by redefining the parameters for living and creating a legacy of change.
My name is Ben Killoy. I'm here in southern Wisconsin. I grew up on a farm here in southern Wisconsin as well. Essentially what I could best describe as growing up under a rock. I didn't have a real good exposure to the world. I didn't understand the world. And to kind of elaborate and even do something completely opposite, I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school and do something that I've never done. There's not a lot of military history in my family. I was been voted least likely to join the Marine Corps. And that moment was kind of like my dare to be great moment. It was a moment where I was like, you know what? I had no idea where this is going to take me, but I'm going to dive in head first. The Marine Corps sent me to Okinawa for 3 years. And so that gave me a whole new world of exposure to everything. I was the first person in my family to have a passport. Really, my story gets started when I got out of the Marine Corps in 2007, because I got out with an itch that I was being held back by the Marine Corps because I wasn't good at shooting and I wasn't good at running. And those are the key things that get you promoted. And I was like, you know what? I'm just not excelling in this environment. So when I got out, I just adopted what I call the TAP code. I got a job. Started going for a degree. I got married. I started a family. And then in 2014, everything kind of came to a head. And that was about 10 years after that, where like I dropped out of college. I was looking in my daughter's eyes, who was 2 at the time. And at that moment, I was like, how can I take you into your life if I can barely do it for myself? And that pit of darkness, and I was 30 at the same time, so it's like my first midlife crisis. This moment of like, I can't do this anymore. Something's not working. I'm following this American dream that I was assigned, but it looks more like an American hell. And it was that pit that now almost 7 years later, or now almost 8 years later, is where I've taken my story and almost like this inner journey to figure out like, who the hell am I and where do I want to go?
Dude, that's awesome. I love it. It's very similar to my story, and just kind of coming to this realization that you're following the script that was laid out by everybody else, essentially our community and our families. And I think that script is good, Ben. I don't know. I'd like to hear what you have to think about it. I kind of think the script is good because as young men, we kind of need some direction to get us going on a good path. And I think that script kind of keeps us in line and helps us fulfill those duties that we have of school and marriage and employment. But at the same time, it's certainly not perfect.
So here's where it really crashed for me growing up on a farm, my dad's life advice was you get a job, you keep your head down, you collect your pension, and you wait until you're 60 and you can enjoy life. Like that was, even to this day, that's what he would tell me to do. Like the life I live today doesn't compute for my dad. And the problem when I graduated, I didn't have enough width to my dream. And most men don't have enough width. We're told you can go to a technical school, you can go to a 4-year degree, or you can kind of go to the military, or you can maybe pretend to figure something out in the job and do it from your parents' basement. But there isn't really a good alternative. There isn't kind of this invitation to explore. And we're just told to keep going without taking a break, to even ask yourself the question, like, do I really know I want to do this, or am I doing it because someone told me I should do it, which isn't a good place to do it from either. So for me, that like what I've had to begin with almost in 2014 when my life crisis, and this is what I see many men between 30 and 40 really get into, is they never had width to their life. They started doing something, they accumulate debt, they have a house, they have a job, they have family, and they get so far down this road that they're like, I can't go back and turn around. I got a car payment, I got a house payment, I got kids to feed, I got all these things to support and provide for. I can't go back and try to take care of me and figure out like what really would light me up for the rest of my life. And so we get trapped. And then that trap creates mediocrity, and then it creates soft men. And then we just kind of like retreat into a corner thinking all we need to do is hold together, is provide. But going back to that width, like the one thing that's kind of stripped from the dream, like in there, it says the American dream, but it's not something like in weird way, it's what we're missing because we're never actually taught how to dream. Like one thing any dad I'm working with as a client, I'll always give them this idea. I want you to become a professional dreamer. And most men are told you don't get to have dreams. You just go out there and do what you need to do to provide. And it's very flat. It's very black and white. It's not very colorful. It's not juicy. It doesn't light you up often. And you're just told that's how life's supposed to be. But life is 4K. But most men have never even been able to get past the 3 colors.
I couldn't agree more, Ben. And that's kind of the place I came in my life, was looking at it and saying, is this it? Is this all I get? Am I really just going to keep doing this rinse and repeat day after day after day until I turn 65? And then if I'm healthy and everything falls into place correctly, then I get to enjoy life. And I finally came to a point where it's like, man, I can't go along with this game anymore. I've got to seek out something different.
There's also something that this is the crazy part about this whole thing, that when you start doing anything to explore more who you are, it's really this, like, it's never something you get final on. I've been doing this speaking, podcasting stuff for almost 5 years now. And every week I add a new layer of like sub-basement to my thinking. And even just recently, like this is only about 4 weeks old, I came up with some help of a coach. There's more to life than being alive. And most men are told how to make a living, but only a few are told how to live. And if that's not speaking to the crisis of masculinity, the crisis of men, the crisis of fatherhood that we see, like living is much more than just this biological thing of you're breathing. Living is like you're experiencing it. You feel joy. You know where to go find joy. You know where to go find life and feel it and get excited and wake up and ready to live this life. It's not meant to be this rinse and repeat. And this idea of living is something that I didn't realize I was saying it this entire time, but I've been saying it this entire time. It's one of those things, the more you whittle it down, they're like, you know what? This is actually the 100 proof alcohol that I've been talking about. I just didn't get it distilled down there. But this idea of living, like your purpose, your passion, I mean, these are things that aren't common vocabulary in people's lives. And you might even be just hearing what I just said, like there's more to life than being alive. and you might just feel like kind of dead inside, but not really able to articulate. Like, that's a real feeling that you need to feel. Like, that's just not something you just keep swallowing down because society doesn't create a space or a place for you to listen to it. You might be listening to this podcast because the only safe place you get to have is between your two ears, that you can feel these things and acknowledge that these things are true. But there is so much more to life that doesn't start outside of life. It starts from the inside. It's an inside job to get that feeling. And there's so much inner kind of work to, best way to describe it is almost grow up a little bit, because we also have this like pandemic of immaturity that most men didn't have a father at home. They didn't have this example that in many cases, I can't tell you how many times I talk to a dad and eventually we get through their story and we go into it. And at the core of their story is a 12-year-old boy just standing there in the mirror waiting for his dad to show up. And they're 36 and they have 3 kids. And that immaturity comes from that pit of that 12-year-old boy. And all the stupid things they do, say, and act, all that comes from this 12-year-old boy that just wants to be loved by a dad. And most men don't have the capacity to look in that far. But that's where this really journey started. And it's where most men need to go, is that inner journey to take the invitation and grow up to experience life.
If you talk about, living being more than just, life, kind of as everybody else looks at it, do you think that also includes like an acceptance of, it's real easy to look at it that way when things seem to be going your way, right? When you're flipping through Instagram or you're flipping through Facebook and you're looking at everybody else, it's like, oh yeah, look how great their life is. And then you put down your phone for a minute, trip over 3 things on your way to the bathroom, and there's no soap, right? I think there's a maturity level too of starting to embrace and accept the hardships for the rewards that they can also bring. Ben, is that sound true?
100%. And even that 12-year-old boy that maybe either had a dumpster fire for a dad, as I call them, or just had an absence dad, there's gratitude in that story, even if it's a hard story, because those hard stories, even if you had a dad that would maybe threaten physical violence for you crying, or would tell you to shut up, or I'll give you something to cry about, these dads that did awful things that you probably suppress and avoid, or insecurities arise from these memories, that dad taught you something. He taught you exactly who you never want to be. And finding gratitude in those hardships, I always describe it as, you need to be able to go on a journey to unconditionally love yourself. Because you can't unconditionally love the world until you unconditionally love yourself. And you can't just pick and choose the good parts of your story. You need to love the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because each one of them taught you something. And even tripping over something on the way to bed, life's not happening to you. Like, when you do something or when something happens to you, like, for example, a real life moment for me, January 26, 2020, I went into work like a normal day. And by 9 a.m., my job was eliminated in a reorg. And I could have easily played the victim. I could have easily said, man, this is just another verdict from the universe of why I suck as a human being. Instead, I took it as, what does this make possible? Like, this is actually a gift allowing me to explore more options, because prior to this, I had a lot of things crossed off because I have to spend 40 hours a week here. Well, that was crossed off. An entire new world just opened up because of that closure. And realizing, and even at that time, I had already been podcasting with Military Veteran Dad prior to that. And so like, I already had been working on my purpose and something bigger. And I was like, what, this is my chance. I didn't know Corona was around the corner and it kind of rewired everything again. But I didn't go back and get a job. I doubled down and like, this is my chance to be a stay-at-home dad, which is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. My wife's a kindergarten teacher. Her world was chaotic. So she did her thing. I did my thing. And I completely rewired my life in a way that I know when I'm 50, I'm never going to look back and wish like, you know what, Ben, you should have got a job because of those sleepless nights. No, I got a phone filled with memories with my kids that I won't trade anything for to sit in an office and process emails for someone that I don't like. None of those things are true for me. And what you mentioned also with this idea of like how we define life happening to us, these really crappy moments that become like verdicts in our head of like, oh yeah, this is just why this is a bad day. Kind of an Eeyore moment, like, oh, here we go again. There's one exercise, because what I'm talking about when I say life isn't just like what you experience in your everyday routine. That's actually what I would call the definition of being alive, is you going through your routine. life is actually going to places where life is happening on a different level. And I'll give you a couple examples that I've just done recently. One of them was there was a career fair going on at our high school. I spent 4 hours listening to seniors present their career plan. It was a volunteer. They have to present it to 4 people in the community. We give them feedback. They do their thing. That's a requirement to graduate. I could have spent that 4 hours sitting here at my desk. But I knew that there was a chance if I going there, I was introducing an entire new variable into my life. I was going to meet people that I had never met before. And I sat across from a priest who is also part of our local sheriff's county reach out program to support them when they're in need. Like when they're in crisis, he is one of the chaplains that reaches out. I'm like, what a great connection. I would never have done that if I wouldn't have blew up my mind and said, let's go sit there for 4 hours and hear some feedback. And like that in itself is a basic invitation of life. Even when going volunteering and doing different things with my kids, there was a family mile run that my kids had. I had to run a mile in the morning. I had to come back in the afternoon for my other kid and run another mile. And during that process, I met a dad, made a friend. And now we're friends. We're connected on our phones, and our kids are in the same class and they're friends as well. So I got a potential dad date essentially. That doesn't happen sitting in my office. That doesn't happen just going around sitting on the couch watching Netflix. Life happens outside of your life. And I wanted you to draw that distinction that when you think of life, think of it outside of your routine because it's completely different. Like life is moving all around you. Even when I travel, I'm always often like mesmerized. Like when I look at the airport or look at a busy city, I'm like, all of this is happening whether I'm here or not. There's people on the street every day, whether I'm here to observe it. That's life. It's outside of myself. And you have to go put yourself in those moments for it to happen. And you might be listening to this and you might be thinking, I'm full of shit. And you might be thinking, that doesn't make any sense to me. This is actually where this moment was born. If you're in one of the warmer states, now we're in the warmer area, so at least we're in the warmer seasons where this would make sense. Go into the woods, take your shoes off, feet to ground, feet to soil, and use your five senses to notice how much life is around you. Smell it, see it, feel it, and tell me that life isn't abundant in that forest. That memory, that moment, the reason why I often tell dads to go do that are in the funk is because that moment will remind you life is abundant. It's the illusion that it's not that makes us sad. It's the illusion that it's not, or that it's limited, that makes us feel like Eeyore. It's the illusion that it's not that prevents us from seeing bigger and dreaming bigger. Like life is truly abundant. If you go into the forest, it's everywhere. It's the same thing within real life, but in a forest, it feels natural. It feels like this is part of the natural design of the world. But most men don't open their doors to go experience it.
So I love the painting that you're putting on this canvas for us, Ben. This idea of life, there being so much more to life, right? And I think what you're kind of saying there is, in order to experience it, you got to get outside of your comfort zone. You got to get outside of your day-to-day. You've got to get outside of where you travel all the time to experience that different angle or that different viewpoint of it. Is that, am I following you right there, Ben?
Correct. And it's often, there's also a couple different, like even shorter, like what I call them, my friends call them Killoyisms because my last name's Killoy, is people often struggle with opportunity. I struggle with opportunity because early on, I couldn't get a job. I was like, you know what, I'm trying to change jobs. I'm trying to change careers. I was stuck. I was like, man, it feels like this world is trying against me. Like I can't get a door open to save my life. And many people have that same thought that there's just not enough opportunity in my life. Like I feel like that's a common thought across 98% of men. Well, here's the core part comes down to opportunity. And no one tells us this, but if they did, like if I could go back and leave myself a sticky note of advice coming out of the Marine Corps, this is what it would be. The amount of hellos you give every day is directly proportional to the opportunity you feel. You want more opportunity? Have more conversations, because every new conversation is something new. And the problem, what we don't realize in this suck of what we do in life and this routine, is new is where change happens. New is where life happens. New is where like you feel invigorated because you're trying to learn something or maybe failing at something. And what I also have learned is that hello is the most powerful word in the human language, but most people don't know how to wield it. But literally, on the other side of the hello, somewhere in your day, could be a conversation that completely changes how you see the world. Completely. You walking by, never saying hello, could be that pit and avoidance that keeps you Eeyore in that day. And that one hello, I can't tell you how many times I've had it on airplanes the most. I've never had like a long-changing, life-changing conversation on an airplane, but I've had some rich conversations on airplanes where I'm like, man, I'm glad I had that. I've sat next to Marine Corps officers, and I could have sat, and we had great conversation for 3 hours. I could have sat next to him, never even known any of this story by never saying hello. It's a simple word, but it is the first step to life. Like, you say hello, you have this conversation, you get to know a man, he gets to know you, and you're like, man, that felt good. Repeat that and you'll change your life. Like, at the core process of men being stuck is as simple of advice as you need to say hello more, because most men are stuck in their job, their career. And also, this is almost like where the verdict comes in. We are assigned these different things, so we don't think we have permission to change them, because either we're holding on to a tradition, we're holding on to some BS in our stories, we're holding on to just things that we don't believe is possible, or maybe the lack of dreams. But I can't tell you how many, I'm sure you've seen this on every podcast interview. You're like, you do what? And then often it's followed up by, and you make how much money? These conversations change how you see the world. And if you want to change how you see your life, you need to change how you see the world. And one hello at a time is the best hack that I know to figure out how you are perfectly designed. You are broken. There is a path. There is a plan for you. And you've got to figure out and say hello enough times to understand how you fit into the world. You can't do that by going to a job and just sitting in a cube all day.
Absolutely love it. I like the way that you got that broke down to just as simple as much of saying hello and how that can change everything. I really think, as you were talking earlier, Ben, about there's this lack of training or teaching in so many different areas. And I think one of the big areas is that just how to have a conversation and how to build rapport and relationships with people in a true conversational way, and how to sell people on things, because you can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you can't communicate that in a way that other people understand, or other people are going to buy into, or other people are even willing to listen to, it's all for nothing. And I think communication is huge. Me as an introvert, this is something that for most of my life has been something I never even considered, never even thought about, never had any desire whatsoever other than to be a few minutes late, chill out in the back of the room, and probably leave a couple minutes early. Maybe give a couple of obligatory hellos, maybe shake a couple hands, and then make sure people saw my face if I needed to, and then head out. But as I've matured and as I've driven myself to get to know myself better and to grow and to get outside of my comfort zone, I've realized the power in conversation, the power in meeting new people, the power in building those relationships. And like you said, you don't know what doors you're opening up, number one, but you also don't know where that leads you as far as growth for yourself, and opening up doors also to serve other people where they're at, just because of your story or where you've been or how you've lived your life and your experience.
And you also, like, on the other side, you don't know what took that other person to put their pants on that day.
Yeah.
Like, you could be the person that like saves their life, because they're like, you know what, I'm here, but I'm not here, and I'm fighting a war, but you notice them. Like, in some ways, it's almost a gift of visibility, especially to men. Most men go through their existence not being visible. We're just a cog in a machine that ends up sucking down our money, takes it from Disney World, and all of these different things of consumerism that takes from us. Visibility to a man can be life-changing, because he might actually give him something he's never had before. Oftentimes, like, when a guy has to struggle to always be right in a conversation, that comes from a lack of visibility early on. Like, he's fighting to be seen. You have a conversation with this man, hear what he has to say, maybe give him some feedback on it, or just appreciation about it. Like, you could give him something that he's never had before. I've had many moments where they're like, thank you for that, because no one has ever helped me. Or something else has been on this road for a long enough time. you have a perspective on different things. So like when I'm having conversations, I'm always thinking like, who do I know that this guy needs to know? Or what do I know that would really help this guy? Because I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I've had a lot of gifts. I've been to a lot of conferences. How could I help them? And it's almost like a business development tool. Like when I'm saying hello, it's like, how can I help change how you see the world? Because I have a lot of stuff. And if I can help you change it differently, those moments, it's like, that's where people remember you. And there is a crux of entrepreneurship that people often initially start making it about you. And you just try to scream to the world and try to get noticed. But actually the real thing is like, it's not who knows you, or it's not like how many people actually know you exist. Or it's about who knows you and are connected to what you do to want to help. And there's another analogy connected to saying hello, and that most men don't have really any core friendships. And one of my basic ideas of friendships is it's literally like if you break the word down, friendships. And if you put those friendships on the ocean of life, those ships are out there trading on your behalf. They're dropping opportunity in that ocean that floats ashore on your side. Like, all of that. Like if you don't have like 10 ships out there thinking of you to try to help you in places that you're not even at. I've been at conferences and I get messages saying like, hey, someone told me to talk to you. I was like, I wasn't even there and someone thought of me. That happens from one hello after another. And to me, that interconnection, even you mentioned relationships, I've even deepened it to like this idea of life is one thing, but there is a relationship to life that's also missing. That if we don't have this peace and calming that can come with this relationship, you're not going to be able to experience it. You're going to be like clogged plumbing, and you're not going to understand why everybody's excited around you and you're always kind of just flat. It's an experience and it's a relationship that you mature. It's like a muscle at the gym. It's not going to come easy. It's going to be weak when you start, but you start with those 10-pound dumbbells and work your way up. And eventually it's second nature. That, like I always say, the front lines of this topic is asking another dad for his number. Because that's the most awkward thing I think we can do in 2022 is ask, hey, can I get your number so we can text? Everyone always gives me their number, but that took me a long time to have the courage to ask that question, because that's a hard question to ask, especially to another man.
Yeah, I got you there, Ben. I couldn't agree more. I think the other side of this too is the listening, because so few people listen these days. Or struggle to listen and I think that falls into the same thing you're talking about, because they're never given an opportunity to speak. So the moment they have that opportunity to speak, there's like this overwhelming desire to just share everything that they're thinking about. And I think that if you can learn how to build rapport, if you can learn how to say hello, like you're saying, if you can learn how to listen, if you can learn how to build those friendships in this day and age, those are like superpowers. Those are truly like having superpowers.
You can become a 1%er.
Exactly. They put you so far above, no matter what career you're in, no matter what region of this world you live in, no matter what country or part of the country you live in. None of that stuff matters. If you can focus in and make these changes or make these important parts of your life, they're a game changer. It doesn't matter. You do it for a long enough time, you will see dividends for your efforts.
I wholeheartedly agree. And the reason why I focus so much on this is you might be thinking like you've got the providing part down, but this experience in life and connection to life is difficult. Your kids are a billboard for how to do this. Like, it's a lot easier than we think. We just man it up in our head, and then we think and come up with good excuses for not doing it. But your kids already know how to experience life. Just watch them go play in the playground. Just watch them live in their imagination. Just watch them build something or do a fort. That is life. It's like getting outside of these things and being in a place that you've never been and just experiencing everything that moment has to offer, good and bad. There's an Instagram reel that goes around a lot and it reminds me of this, that the most dangerous man out there is one that often just says it is what it is. Because that man accepts whatever life gives him and just keeps on living. Because when you have that is what it is, you don't get mad. You don't get upset that I spend 15 minutes in the pickup line picking up my daughter. It is what it is. I mean, we're all here miserably in the line. Like, me getting mad doesn't change it. Like, that is what it is almost like this graduation moment. because you accept all of life and you realize, you know what? All of this took 13.8 billion years to get here. Who am I to argue with it?
So where do we start, Ben? Where do we start if we want to start being more intentional about the way we're living our life? If we want to start to see the bigger picture of this world that's around us, that's affecting us, where do we begin?
For me, there's kind of what I've boiled down to the 3 L's to life. Lead is the first one, love, the second one, and legacy is the third one. That the first place to begin is that the only physical object in this known universe that you have any control over is you. And every time you step outside of yourself to solve something externally, to manipulate, to influence, to solve, you are away from the problem. The problem always goes back to you. You are the only thing that you can surrender full control to. And focusing on that, identifying and getting really crystal clear on who you want to be when you grow up, and whether you're 45 or 25, that question is still just as valid. And it starts on the inside with how you lead yourself is how you lead your life. The thing that we often get messed up in leadership is we think leadership is just about influencing people. What I didn't figure out till like 4 years later, leadership is about self-leadership. How you lead yourself is the only thing that matters. Everything else is a byproduct of how you lead yourself. And so if you're, again, everything that I shared today are tools to lead yourself better, to communicate with yourself better, and to, again, get experiences in life that allow you to see it differently, so that way you can start living differently. And that all is something that you have within yourself.
Yeah, it all really starts with that story that you're telling yourself. And what I find is the majority of the stories that we're telling ourselves are not true. In fact, most of the time we're lying to ourselves, and oftentimes we're telling ourselves lies that make us feel better about the situation than it actually is. And we're actually just a form of putting our head in the sand. And a lot of times that leads to really the death of good things in our life. We tell ourselves, no, our marriage is fine. In reality, it's not. And it prevents us from taking the actions necessary to move that forward. So I really appreciate your lead, love, and legacy, and starting with lead, because if you can't lead yourself, then,
nothing else matters.
No.
I mean, it's the core. And how many men have said it where I didn't see the divorce coming?
Yeah.
That's your ignorance and blindness to the situation, because you're stuck in and told how to provide. But that's not what your wife wants. She wants you to be alive. She wants you to light her up. She wants you to be a model of what living looks like, because you are the lid on who your family becomes. And if you're stuck, they're stuck, and there's only so much they're going to be stuck for before you're the one on the side.
Yep. For sure. And for me, I always say that the home is the hardest place to lead, Ben, because there's no respect of rank. There's no respect of, oh, he's got the corner office. There's no laughing at your awful jokes. It is the hardest place in the world to lead, is in your home, because you don't get any of those benefits of those other things. They know you inside and out. And if you are going to truly lead them, goes back to, like you were saying, you need to learn to lead yourself.
And no one will respect you more than you do for yourself. And so even the context of home, like the reason why it's messy is because you're messy. And the irony that most men don't realize is the same things at work that you use to lead are the same things at work at home, but your story on the inside is what messes them up. So like you talked about home. To me, home is an inside job. You can't create a home. It's not about a mortgage. It's a feeling. If you don't feel home on yourself on the inside, you can't create that feeling. It's a feeling that comes from the inside. Like you project this feeling of safety, you project this feeling of life, and that comes from you doing the work on the inside. It doesn't come from you painting the pictures on the wall. It doesn't come from any of these things. It doesn't come from the honey-do list. It doesn't come from doing the dishes. It comes from, are you home on the inside? If you're not, everything else is irrelevant, and your number one job is to work on the inside to get to that point of, am I the lowest heartbeat in the room? If I am, I'm there. If I'm not, keep doing the work.
So Ben, It looks like we're running out of time here. I don't know. I didn't have this issue on my last 2 episodes that I recorded. Share where people can find your work, share what you're doing so that people can get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing, because it's powerful. I appreciate this time.
So everything can be found at benkilloy.com. I'm pretty much an open book. In the top right corner, there's a button for a design your legacy call, and helping men kind of like navigate. Like, one thing that I've kind of done through my work and what I'm really good at is helping men expand their dream, like taking a little idea and like expanding it and like, let's map it out. So if you want an understanding of like, who could you become? What does your life look like living? And you're struggling at that definition, reach out. Up the right-hand corner on benkilloy.com, there's a free coaching call there for every man. And that to me is this idea of what living could look like. And we often get stuck on the past a lot. But what I've learned within coaching is understanding where you've been is important so you don't end up back there. But it's actually more important of where you go. And what most men miss is a gravity to a vision that begins to pull them. Like, if you have a really big vision in the future, that vision will have a gravity. It will pull you towards it. You don't have to have everything figured out because gravity starts taking over. Head over to benkilloy.com. I'm pretty much a book as well. I'm on all the Instagram and socials as Ben_Killoy as well. So reach out to me on all the platforms. You'll find me. But upper right-hand corner on benkilloy.com.
Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate your time. Appreciate what you're doing. And thank you for these good words. I hope that men will go out and do what you recommended here in this podcast, because it's powerful.
Thank you, Joe, for having me on here and allowing me to share my message.
I hope that you liked that episode with my guest, Ben Killoy. Check out the podcast details for information on his website and where you can find him online. Dads, are you feeling stuck, lost, frustrated, and lacking a purpose? Are you in a rut going through the motions day after day and getting nowhere? If I could guarantee to get you out of this rut, help you find clarity and direction in your life, feel confident in yourself and your decisions, and find purpose, would you take me up on that offer? Here's how the offer works. You work with me one-on-one. We meet once a week on Zoom for 45 minutes for 12 weeks. During this time, I'll provide you with a personalized plan to get you unstuck and very clear on where you're going. Weekly video lessons so that you can learn what you need to do, and assignments so that you can put what you learn into practice, and challenges to get you outside of your comfort zone where growth occurs and confidence is born. And I'll even provide the required books, my favorite book on leadership, an awesome leather-bound journal, and several field notebooks, and the supplies you need to succeed delivered right to your front door. Now, there will be effort and sacrifice involved because everything of value has a price. But I will be with you every step of the way with support via text so that I can help keep you on task. You will need to show up on time, prepared for the one-on-one calls, complete the lessons, challenges, and assignments, but don't worry, where you see uncertainty right now, I see your potential. I've been there and have experienced this journey myself firsthand. Now, what happens if you show up on time, you're prepared for your calls, lessons, assignments for the 12 weeks, but you don't have clarity and direction, you don't feel confident in yourself and your decisions, and you can't find a purpose? Then I will keep coaching you for free until you do. There's absolutely no risk to you of not leveling up. The program isn't about change. It's not about evolution. It's about a new you. It's about uncovering the hero that is within you, that has been buried under years of lies, fears, and expectations of others. Sure, you can continue doing nothing, but you know exactly where that leads. You can try to do it yourself by reading countless books, watching a bunch of YouTube videos. Be careful, those cat videos are distracting. And listening to hours of podcasts hoping to find something that clicks. But if you're serious about finally taking control of your life, dropping the excuses, and becoming the father, husband, and leader that you want to be, let's schedule a strategy call where we can design a plan to get you out of the rut and headed where you want to go. Go to heroeswanted.us/coaching. And schedule your strategy call today.